Good morning. My name is Chris McIntosh from Esri. I'm joined by my colleague Jeff Barani, and we'd like to welcome you to the next installment of our emergency management webinar series, using Collector for ArcGIS to get information to and from the field for disaster response. We settled on this topic based on feedback from the user community, on what you wanted to hear and what you were interested in. So we're really excited to present this for you. Today's meeting, we're going to go through the purpose of the webinar series, an overview of the Collector application, an example of initial damage assessment, talk about some other uses for Collector beyond damage assessment. We do have some partners that have very thorough solutions in the field collection space, and then next steps, next webinars, and ways to continue to collaborate. So the purpose of this webinar series is to keep you, our user community, up to date on using ArcGIS to support emergency management disaster response. Trends and best practices are constantly evolving. We're constantly learning from you as the ways that you're using our technology, and we're constantly rolling out improvements and new solutions and templates for your use. So by having this regular cadence of webcasts, we can continue to communicate to you what we're learning and hear back from you about the things that you're interested in hearing about. We're trying to do these the first Thursday of every month. We plan on doing that through the next year, so please block that time out on your calendar. And the next topic in January, after the holidays, will be how to modernize emergency management agencies with ArcGIS Online, the entire capability for emergency management. Please let us know things that you're interested in hearing so we can continue to tailor these to your wants and needs. We may do a broad subject like we're going to do next month, or like this month when we're focusing on one particular application or template. We also will talk about things from disaster response program and our special events program as we continue to support responses and events around the world. So on to today's topic, using Collector for ArcGIS. So as many of you know, ArcGIS is a platform. It's a series of applications, templates, capabilities, and foundational tools brought together that allow you to share information across your entire organization. It combines traditional GIS functionality with applications and templates that can be put in the hands of responders, executives, the public, people in the field, people who are doing analysis functions, all tied to WebGIS, which allows the sharing of web maps and information products across this entire ecosystem. This is a big change that is really changing the way that we can use ArcGIS for emergency management, because it's allowing us to empower all of the people in an emergency management organization, whether they be in the field doing damage collection, in the operations center managing an emergency support function, in the command staff having to make critical decisions, or in the after-action and recovery phases where they're gathering information and trying to put it together in coherent ways for briefings and after-action reports. All of this is driven by the GIS professionals managing this environment, managing the data, and making sure that the right information is getting to the right people at the right time. But this is now happening at a near real-time speed. Instead of taking hours to get information products out to people, it's now happening in minutes, if not seconds. That's really exciting because it's really empowering decision makers for the first time with time-sensitive information, visually and graphically and geospatially, allowing them to make really good decisions. So the key principle of this is agility. Applying the ArcGIS platform in ways that can be quickly configured and quickly delivered to people who have needs. And there's a mantra that is important here. Everything we show you in these webinar series are off-the-shelf applications or templates. They only need to be configured. So you take the ArcGIS platform, you take those applications, and you just configure them, tailor them to your needs, and get them out the door. What we've seen is people are actually taking this to a level where they're taking an application, configuring it, and getting into people for use for an hour or so, and then the situation has changed, and so they need a different application, and they do the process all over again. So these applications can be built very quickly and very focused to fill a specific need, and when that need is passed, they can be discarded because there's not a large investment in time and energy in a project, and then a more appropriate application built and put in the hands of the people who need them. This agility and this flexibility and ease of use is really changing the way that applications can be used by your organization. So if you're in an initial response or initial damage assessment phase or moving into a recovery phase, you can field an application that's very simple to build, very simple to use, so it doesn't require a training. Use it for the specific workflow that you're trying to accomplish, and when that workflow is completed, you can get rid of it and move on with something more appropriate to the phase of the response that you're working in. So one of those applications is the operations dashboard for ArcGIS, and this is one that is being used in a lot of places to monitor activities and events. It leverages the entire ArcGIS platform. You can use it to track performance, assess status and performance. You can use it to be alerted when things are happening that apply to areas, facilities, or infrastructure that you're responsible for. You can use it to track metrics, amount of damage, or number of facilities affected, or where are we on track with our planning, or are our resources getting filled, our resource requests being filled in a timely manner. This is one of those applications that's completely configurable. You have a combination of mapping and tabular information that can be applied in the same interface. It can be used mobile or in the operations center or on the desktop, and really provides a comprehensive look at much of the information that you need for situational awareness in your specific mission area. So we're seeing a lot of dashboards where it's for a specific ESF, but we're also seeing them be used for macro level situational awareness at the front of the operations center on the big board, for example. Completely configurable, very easy to pull together in a way that is can be built quickly in a way that's focused on what your needs are, and very powerful tool. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the dashboard and how it's used with damage assessment later on in the presentation. Which takes us to another application. This is the one we're going to focus on today, Collector for ArcGIS. Collector is just that. It's called Collector for a reason. Many of the time it's used and it's focused on damage assessment, and we're going to talk a lot about that today, but Collector is designed to collect mobile information. It's again, you can download it through the App Store. It's just a configuration only application. You don't need to customize it. You don't need to do any special coding. It's ready to go. It's completely functional on mobile devices, Google, iOS, and it puts maps in the hands of your field workforce and allows them to visualize and interact and collect information very quickly, append photographs, videos, things to that information and get it back to the command center, operations center, or whoever needs it in real time. So coming soon is a version for Windows 10 and some updates to how it syncs and its accuracy. This is what we like to call this a GIS nightmare. This is an example of a damage assessment, how it's been done on paper forms. And you have all this, it's collected, people going out with paper and clipboards collecting information. And I look at that as a former operations chief, and it doesn't do me a whole lot of good to understand how bad is bad. I can see that there's a lot of records here, but I don't know the trends, I don't know the patterns, I don't have any summary information, and somebody has to take all this hard pen and paper information and get it into a GIS so that I can see as a decision maker what's really going on. This is the exact thing that Collector is designed to improve upon and make happen, from taking hours or days to minutes in the application-driven era that we're in now. So Jeff's going to start talking a little bit about Collector, and he's going to walk you through a demonstration on how to use it. Jeff, go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everyone. So before we get going, I just wanted to, make some comments from our perspective from the disaster response program. We've really seen a lot of utility of Collector for ArcGIS as we've supported our users through various disasters. One that comes to mind for me particularly and close to us here in Colorado is the flooding in 2013, and we really saw Longmont Power be able to take advantage of this technology very quickly to do inspections, after the flood. So with just a little bit of configuration, that we were able to teach their staff how to go out in the field with tablets or smartphones and be able to go out and collect this information. This is something that's gotten a lot easier and a lot quicker to be able to implement over the years. It used to be to stand up ArcGIS server, and that would take time to set up and configure and work with ArcGIS for Windows Mobile or ArcPad, and it'd take a lot of setup to get going with this technology. But as the platform has evolved, as technology has evolved, it's really gotten a lot easier and quicker to be able to provision these capabilities, very, very quickly. Another event where this, really came into focus was during the CAPSTONE 2014 exercise last year. Although, albeit during an exercise, the folks in the field, in this case in Kentucky and in Ohio County, were able to leverage the technology and do some damage assessment from an exercise perspective. And very easy training, very easy to use, very easy to set up, and really went a long way to helping them be more capable with this technology and set of capabilities as they move forward with having to respond to real-world events. So just wanted to spend a few minutes to note that we've really seen this in action, and through our experience from a disaster response side and observing our users putting this to work and seeing a lot of value from it. So, as Chris mentioned, I just want to kind of do some setup here on Collector for ArcGIS itself. So it's available on Android and iOS today. It just recently, I think yesterday, went into beta 2 for Windows. This is something that can work not only with ArcGIS Online in a cloud environment, but it can also work with your portal environment on-premise. It requires a named user account to work, and you log in, and that helps you keep track of edits, who did what work, and that type of thing. I think we've talked about some of the typical uses. Really, the key thing, kind of replacing or paper-based forms for collecting information. Identity is a key part of this. You can either use ArcGIS Online and what's our built-in identity store, or you can leverage your own enterprise identity provider through SAML. It also supports multi-factor authentication if that's a requirement for your or organization. This also can be used in a disconnected fashion. We'll talk a little bit more about that through the webcast. So in terms of the collection capabilities, it's not just points. Oftentimes we talk about points like damaged homes or whatever is the type of features that can collect, but it collects all types: points, lines, and areas. You can simply tap on the map to update or remove vertices. You can you leverage the GPS on the device and actually go into stream mode if you're tracing lines, and leverage the GPS technology to track you as you move through the field and collect that information. Over time, various enhancements have been made to support various updates and enhancement requests that folks have supplied. Specifically continuous collect mode. So if you're collecting features that are very similar and just need to get an updated location for each one, or just simple, quick updates to the attributes. It's got some of those knobs and dials that you can turn to make a collection in the field of similar items very quick and efficient. So those are definitely some capabilities to explore. Well, we'll go through a demonstration of setting this up here in a few minutes, but just in slide form, wanted to highlight a couple of things. So as with everything in the platform, it's all based on web maps. So web maps are what we'll use to set up and configure these applications, and we need at least one feature service that is editable to be able to be used in Collector. So that's key. That feature service could either be hosted by ArcGIS Online or come from your ArcGIS ArcGIS server, and that needs to be editable. If you want to track where your editors go, you can leverage a location tracking layer. This is a built-in capability of Collector to drop breadcrumbs or points to see where your team members were in the field, automatically. So it gives you a sense of where they were in the field. This is an optional setting, and you can choose to set this up. It's also important to share these maps within groups. That's a way of creating focused tasks, whether that's by shift or by task or by area or by incident. We set up these web maps and then share them with groups and then invite members to those groups to go out in the field and do their work. And as many of you know, this is one of the core foundational aspects of using and leveraging ArcGIS Online. So as we talked about, there's two different supported data types, if you will, for collecting data, either using ArcGIS Online in a hosted mode or on premise. There's a couple of knobs and dials here to turn in terms of the supported operations for editing. You have everyone have the ability to add, update, and delete features, or you can limit to only updating existing features or add new features. Furthermore, you can only let people edit features that they have created. So there's different ways of locking down this information. It's an opportunity to provide some governance in terms of the way that people collect this information. In the synchronization capability is key to be able to turn on, to be able to have those edits move back and forth, not only in a connected mode, but a disconnected mode as well. With each release, you've seen that the ArcGIS Online team and the various teams that work with them have provided some additional industry templates that are available. What are some of the industry templates that are out there? And those get added, and I'll show you that here when I do a demonstration. Damage assessment is one of those industry templates that's available to simply click and be able to use. To configure the experience, in terms of what people are to collect, we can use pop-ups to help define that. And if you can furthermore take advantage of some of the geodatabase capabilities like feature validation or checklists, if you only want people to pick things of certain types, those are some of the things that are out there. And editor tracking and making sure that edits are automatically logged to the features that people collect, and so that's put in there automatically, not only with the user, but the time that they made the edit and the last update. So next, now we're going to move into some demonstrations. So first, I'm going to go through a scenario of showing you how you can actually use Collector for initial damage assessment. So we'll kind of go through that from a workflow perspective. And then second, I'll go through some steps in a live demonstration to show you how you can actually go through the process of setting that up. So we'll start here first in a scenario. So what we're looking at here is the operations dashboard, and so here we've got it configured to see the results of damage assessment. In this case, it was a hypothetical event of flooding along the San Diego River, and this is the this kind of shows of the map that someone would want to see, not those list of paper forms. They want to see the map of all this information and where it is in real time. And to keep this map up to date, we can use the Collector application. This is one of the apps that's available from the App Store or Google Play. We can simply open up the Collector application. In this case, I've already logged in with my identity, and I can see all the maps that I have access to. I can also further refine that to see what are the maps that are available to us in any specific group. So in this case, I have a specific incident group set up for the flooding response here. I'm going to go ahead and open up that web map for the damage assessment template here. So now some of the data loads, and we can see some of the data that's already been collected, in the field. So our job as a task member, as part of the task force, to conduct the initial damage assessment, here's to go and take a quick look at some of the houses in the damaged area. And we'll need to be able to collect and update this information. So I'll simply hit the plus button here on the phone to add in a new point. And here you can see the list of forms that are available to you to be able to collect. These are the traditional paper forms that you might fill out in a paper fashion. But in this case, we want to do a quick initial damage assessment of these residential structures. So in this case, I clicked a point on the map. I can fill out some of the information required, and I can have Siri help me here, 150 Riverview Road, and speak that in to fill out the information. I can make any additional comments that are appropriate that we need to collect here. If we see major flooding observed near the garage or that type of thing. So fill out some of the tabular information here. We can also associate photos or videos with this record. So in this case, I can choose from existing photos that are available in my library. That's just one way of being able to add in those photos. And so then once I'm done in filling out this information, I can go ahead and post and submit those updates. So those are either sent to the cloud in ArcGIS Online, or those are sent back to our ArcGIS server, and you can see that those updates now are available in real time. So you can see that the operations dashboard has now updated with this information. This information's been sent back, and you'll notice that the information from the field is available now here back in the command center with the pop-up and the photo that's come across. So that's just one example of collecting new information. But another capability that we wanted to highlight was the ability to update existing information. And as you see here, we've got these orange squares, and these represent the 1,000-meter U.S. National Grid cells. So I simply tapped on one of those squares, and I can simply update some of the information to keep the status information of our work up to date. If we've finished all of our work in the area that we've been assigned and it's 100% complete, I just did a quick, simple edit to that feature and have submitted that information, on and move forward. So this just another kind of use of the technology to keep additional information up to date. So another thing to note here is these don't have to be super rigorous long forms. These just can be really simple things like field observations. If we want to create a simple way just to add people to collect additional information that they see useful. Maybe it's not what you had in mind for the standard forms, but if they see something like debris on road or something along those lines, we can pass along notes and that type of information. We see this is kind of a lesson learned from some of our disaster response, that people need additional ways to capture information. As you notice here, I can use the camera on the device and to use a photo that we take, in this case, just right outside my office, and go ahead and submit that information as well. And all of this information then gets sent back and synchronized with the server where the data is hosted and gets updated in real time. So here we can see the results of the U.S. National Grid status update, as well as the notes that have been updated and added in from the field, including pictures. So this, just from a scenario perspective, I wanted to highlight here how you would use the technology to support simple tasks like doing something along the lines of initial damage assessment. So that was just a kind of a quick scenario to show you this information in use. Initial damage assessment is just one of the many examples that you can use to collect information in the field. But now I want to take a minute and step back and show you how you would actually go through the process of setting up this information. So here I'm inside of ArcGIS Online under my content. I've logged in, and the first step that I want to do is I want to create a new feature service to be able to collect data here. And this particular dialog has gotten updated over time. So here we see the list of industry templates that are available to us. Field interviews, fire hydrant inspections, field notes, environmental sensitivity indexes, restaurant inspections. These represent the predefined list of forms or data collection elements that you can get going with right away as a part of the platform. So this is one tab inside here. Another key aspect is you can create a new feature service for data collection from existing layers. This can be from existing layers inside your organization. These are things that may be available and existing today, or these can be URLs from other feature services out there. For example, the solutions team within Esri has a service catalog for emergency management, and you can, we'll show you the link for that later on, and you can use this as a way to get started. Perhaps you want to leverage the MapSAR features service for wildland search and rescue. Here's where you could simply paste in that URL and get started from someone else. Maybe a neighboring state has a form that you'd like to use for your own data collection. You can simply type in the URL here and be off and running. But for the purposes of demonstration today, we want to go back and pick the damage assessment feature service as the type of element that we want to collect. So in this case, we want to go out and collect along these three things. We'll focus mostly on residential buildings, and now through this wizard process, just a couple of things to collect. What's the extent of the feature service of the area that we want to collect? Now, some quick metadata is required. So we'll just put in the title of this feature service now. Update this with any tags that are appropriate, and we're off and running. So now this feature service is being created in the cloud, and here it just takes a few seconds for this to get spun up and created, and then we'll be off and running with being able to update and use this information. So now the feature services is created, and you can see the couple of layers here that we want to have access to. Here from the arrow button, I'm going to turn on a couple of additional capabilities. I want to enable attachments. Attachments are the way and the mechanism that we can associate photos or videos right there with the features. So this didn't happen by default, so I'm going to go ahead and turn these on for each of the layers here inside the application. Next, I'm going to go into edit mode for this particular feature service, and I want to highlight some of the knobs and dials that we talked about in the slides. So we've got a couple different options here from an editing perspective. In this case, it's going to be pretty wide open. We're going to enable anyone to add, update, or delete features, but if we'd like, we can limit the ways that people collect and update this information and make it a little bit more focused. Notice here that the sync capability is automatically turned on. This allows us to work in a disconnected mode if needed, if we don't have internet connection. That's turned on by default here. And also note that this track updates feature has been added over some of the recent releases here. And note that we can limit, if we'd like, who can update and some of the features. Is it only the person that created the feature, and that type of thing. So we'll just leave these settings by default, but I just wanted to highlight where you can modify these and see where these are updated and be able to turn these things on. So in this case, it was the property of the feature service itself. So now what I've done here in this step is I've set up the specific feature service to be able to go out and collect that information. The next step to make this work is as I need to add this to a new web map. So that's what we're going through and doing now. So now the feature service has been added to the web map, and here's the environment where I can go in and start to collect and do some additional settings for this information. So in the case of our demonstration scenario here, we were doing damage assessment around the San Diego area. I'll go ahead, I'm going to save a new map here for this work. So this is going to be our collector damage assessment map. This is what we'll see in the list. Just fill out a couple of quick items here, title, tags, that type of thing. And now this will be the map that people will open up on the device to go out and do their work. So I'm going to adjust a couple of things here. I'm going to change the titles so they're a little bit more readable here, so they don't have the service in here. Clean a couple of things up. And this just here takes a few minutes. The other thing that I wanted to highlight here is we were, for our inspection, we were doing things from really a initial damage assessment, perspective. So we really wanted, in that case, we wanted to limit the information that people, collected in the field, and we just wanted to make it a couple of key things that we wanted people to collect. So I'm only going to have them update, information related to the, address, just a couple of other things, the extent of damage, that was essentially the symbology that we used to collect, and any additional comments that we wanted to have. In this case, we want it to be a very focused experience to be able to go out in the field and collect that information. And that is controlled here from the pop-up perspective. This is where we can keep that information, and only limit it to the types of information that we that we wanted to collect. So in this case, for residential buildings, when they go out and do their edits, you'll see that there's only a couple of things that will be asked for to collect: the full address, the extent of damage, and any additional comments. And you'll note here that attachments has been enabled by that checkbox that we had set earlier. And in this case, the pop-up is automatically displaying some of the editor information that we had turned on as through this. So it's got my username that's been added in here in the date of when this was last edited. So these, just with a couple of quick steps, this is what it would take to set up and configure a map for use in the field with collector, as we showed in the demonstration, to be able to go out there and do their work. So that concludes the demonstration part that we wanted to show, and I think I've got a couple of questions about that have been come in here. There's a question earlier about Windows 10 beta. There was a blog post that just went out on that, and we'll make sure to get that out to you to talk about how to get access to Windows. If there'll be a legend component is one of the questions. I believe that that's one of the options there now, to be able to see the legend, and that also kind of works up in the collection element to be able to see that information updated. I don't know if the product team has more details on the legend updates that will be coming. So thank you for questions, and keep them coming. So initial damage assessment is just one of the many potential uses for collector for disaster response purposes. This can also be just something really simple with simple reports, and so this is a configuration of the public safety, health, and reports template that's available from the solutions team, and it's just something really simple for non-911, non kind of standard incident information to be brought into the field. Maybe it's just something simple where you want to have a report from people in the field on various conditions or incidents, like a big snow or something along those lines. So again, just just simple reports is one way to be able to collect that information and push that back into a centralized mechanism here, as you see in the operations dashboard. So simple reports is just one aspect. The federal wildland fire community has been doing a lot of work with collector over the past couple of seasons, and they use this to collect a lot of information in the field that may have been traditionally done by GIS analysts back at an incident command post. So they've got a set of feature services and a standard set of forms that they go out and collect that information. This is from, and you can get to that from the National Interagency Fire Center ArcGIS Online site, and the URL is posted there. So, in my mind, this is a great way to deputize more folks in your organization to be collectors of GIS information for them and for you. And this is a great way of, instead of having to interpret any markings that they may mark up on a paper map, you're deputizing more of your team members and staff to have them actually collect that information for you, and this helps improve accuracy, reduces the time to be able to get this information, and frees up GIS staff to do more work like analysis and that type of thing. But this is just a great example from the wildland fire community that I wanted to share, and they've really been doing great work in using collector for wild and fire response. The next example that I wanted to talk about was something that the Central U.S. Earthquake Consortium and the state of Missouri did for a recent exercise. They, working with their contractor G&H International, they really took the vision of Collector and put it into practice. They saw that they wanted to use the ATC 20 and 45 forms to do their damage, do their safety assessment. So this is exactly what Collector is designed for. So they use this existing schema from this paper form and use that to drive the work that they did to set up the information to be able to collect here in Collector. So they had an exercise in St. Louis a couple of weeks ago where they trained building inspectors on how to use this technology, and they were able to very quickly and effectively go out in the field and fill out this information here using Collector instead of using those paper forms. Here you can see that they've followed the structure that's already set up in the paper forms, and can use drop downs where appropriate to make things really simple and focused for people to collect. This provides for some standardization of the information that's collected in the field and helps get it in quickly in a consistent way, and then very quickly, instead of having to hand jam and enter in all those paper forms, we can very quickly get in a sense of the damage and the assessment in a given area. And here you can see the results of their work as they did this exercise on the Jefferson Barracks outside of St. Louis. So, really, inspiring to see, CUSEC, in the state of Missouri, do this work, and really proud of them for how they're able to use the technology. And just one of the other kind of great examples that we wanted to share with you today, and perhaps give you ideas on how you may use this technology for your own work and your own missions. Another example that we wanted to talk about here, and another collection schema that's already well defined, comes from MapSAR for Wilderness Search and Rescue. So that community has, led by Paul Doherty, has been working hard to define a set of ways of collecting this information. So you can use this existing feature service that's linked here, and we'll get this to you in the slides, is one of the collection URLs that you may use for wilderness search and rescue efforts. So with a point last seen, other common information that's used to communicate the work that's done for wilderness search and rescue. A lot of that's already been defined for you in terms of assignments and that type of thing. And so here's some more information on the use of MapSAR. So again, this is this group has sees Collector as a big tool to help them do their work, and it's another collection template that's out there and available for you to leverage, that's provided by the MapSAR community. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about some other areas that you see the potential for this to be used?
Yeah. So, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, this application is called Collector for a reason. It's used often in the damage assessment workflow, but we also see it used for other types of mobile data collection. One of the great examples of that is just simply inspections, bridge inspections, dam inspections, even health and food safety inspections. Any kind of workflow where people are going out and filling out a document and collecting information and taking photographs. If you can think of something along those lines, Collector can be used to do that. So replacing a clipboard with the application is kind of the mindset here. There's some other areas that we see in public safety that Collector is being used more and more. One of those is just incident documentation. When first responders roll up on an incident, we saw this in one of the special events that we've supported, when the first responders get there and they need to document the scene, whether it's a medical situation, a civil situation, or a law enforcement situation. Collector can be used for that and get that information back into the command center very quickly. Conducting field interviews, witness interviews, just kind of figuring out what happened. It's very good use for that as well. And then in large special events, like you have with some of the things coming up in the next year with the political season, or rallies or sporting events, crowd monitoring. The operation centers are usually fairly distant from the scene of the activities. So people in the field just simply saying this is what the crowd is doing now, taking a video, taking a photograph, filling out things like number of people in the holding areas if the crowd is in certain, penned-in areas, which happens in a lot of things. That can all be documented and quickly sent back to the command center, the operations center, and as Jeff showed in the demonstration, can be appended as the situation changes. So it provides the mechanism for field situational awareness to be shared across the entire public safety organization, not just in emergency management. Lots of good other use cases are being developed here.
Great, thanks, Chris. Just wanted to make a couple of notes from an advanced, perspective. Excuse me. The technology also works in an offline mode as well. So if you don't have a connectivity, you can set up beforehand and provision an area to be able to work in an offline mode. There's a couple of notes from a configuration perspective. Feature services must have all editing operations enabled along with sync. And you can use your own tiled map services if you want to go offline or leverage Esri-based map services. A couple notes on location accuracy. It leverages the location services API on the device. So that's a key thing to understand as a part of this. And we'll talk about some other options for improving accuracy, later on. But just note that that's, a key thing that's driving the accuracy of the collection. Also note that as we talked about, you can download areas for your device. There's also options for actually side loading those base maps. So you can have a tile package of an area that you want to use and then use that to update and then, use that to side load, and we'll provide links on how to do that in the communication we'll provide with you after the webinar. Chris, do you want to spend a minute talking about some of this great partner option here?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So what we just showed you was what we call preliminary or initial damage assessment functionality. But many of you have to do comprehensive damage assessment, which involves the legal collecting of financial information and submitting that to organizations such as FEMA for reimbursement or IDA or PDA purposes. One of our Esri partners, CrisisTrack, this is what they do, and not only do they implement collector to the level of detail required by current FEMA standards, they also make sure that they're staying up to date on current guidance, the latest forms, the latest regulations surrounding these programs, so that the technology is in line with the policy and programmatic requirements of those very important programs. This view that CrisisTrack provides even goes so far as to take the collected information and print it out in the proper forms required for submittal to FEMA with the damage classifications and categorizations that are required. So if you have an in-depth, comprehensive damage assessment need at a state or local emergency management level, for example, CrisisTrack is an option that's out there that really does a great job of matching the policy and procedures to the technology and ensuring that those two are in alignment.
Great, thanks, Chris. Just a couple of other things to note. There's some hardware offerings that Esri has to go along this. So we've got from Leica, there's a hardware offering for high accuracy, GPS, on the device that's all kind of put together beyond what you would have in existing, smartphones. And another option from Trimble is to actually have a Bluetooth device with improved professional grade, GPS accuracy. So if you need, high accuracy information in your collection efforts, these are two additional hardware options to help to be able to improve that and be able to have improved collection accuracy in your work in the field. As we always do in these webcasts, we want to provide a couple of other additional updates. So wanted us just to spend a few minutes providing some updates from the ArcGIS for emergency management solution perspective. They've had the new solution, the new situational awareness templates out for a while. Those came out in the October release. They actually added the situational awareness widget widget to the ArcGIS Web Application Builder in the November release of ArcGIS Online. So you'll see that's been added in there now, and you don't have to use the developer edition to leverage that particular widget. That team has a lot of great updates that are planned, including new templates for hazard mitigation that's in the works, and updates also planned for the special events template. So we'll make sure to keep you posted on those updates as those evolve. Also note that they have a service catalog, as I mentioned before, of all these map services that they provide as a part of their templates, and that you'll have that link after the webcast, and we've been tweeting that out as we've been talking today. So you definitely check that out to see how you can quickly set up, feature services to support your emergency management disaster response need. And we've been getting a question on the ERG tools, the emergency response guide tools, every now and again, and just wanted to highlight that this is the proper place on GitHub to be able to go and download the emergency response guide geoprocessing tools, and you can make those available as ArcGIS services if you want as well. So these are still the 2012 guidance, and we'll look to update those with the 2016 guidance when they are made available here shortly. So those are just a couple of quick updates that we wanted to highlight while we're here from the ArcGIS for Emergency Management solution template perspective. Additionally, we have a standing examples group as a part of our disaster response program. This is where we've inventory a lot of the great work that's done by our users and leveraging the technology to make products for disaster response and emergency management. Some of the key things that just coincidence here that all the new additions that we've made to this group this month all are around El Nino. So we've got an example from Cal OES that they've put together, a great example from disaster relief in Santa Barbara that's got shows some of the vulnerability in California as a result of El Nino, and also added in the El Nino story map journal that we showed on our last webcast from El Nino, and inventorying some of the data sets and sources that are out there along the lines of what would be needed for dealing with the response to El Nino related events. So definitely check out that group. If you have other additions that that you think we should add, definitely reach out and please let us know. And again, this is a great thing to check out to give you some ideas of other ways that you can use the technology based on what users have done for their own needs for disaster response. As we're closing, we've have some lessons learned here that we wanted to share from our disaster response, team members, and in some of their experience in working with the users and using this for disaster response. And there's just a couple of notes here that we wanted to highlight. The first bullet there may be obvious, but it's important. Understanding and having experience with ArcGIS Online is helpful when you're trying to deploy Collector, especially in pressureful times, after a disaster or supporting an incident. So understanding the feature services and web maps, as we showed before, is really important. Poor network connectivity can negatively impact synchronizing data, and what we mean by that is if you only have like a satellite connection or a Wi-Fi connection at a base camp, or a lot of people may be competing for network traffic, that can negatively impact the synchronization efforts, especially if you have a lot of photos or videos to synchronize. So just wanted to kind of note that a good internet connection is helpful. There's some updates planned for Collector that can help kind of mitigate this situation, but just note that the network is key for synchronizing data. Obviously, it can work in a disconnected mode, but when synchronizing, a good internet connection is helpful. Make sure to validate the GPS accuracy and capability of your device, and note what can be provided there. Always good to make sure that the operating system on your device is always up to date. Also important to plan for a battery life strategy. Will you have enough juice, if you will, to make it through your required collects in the field? Do you need additional batteries or functions that will help extend the life of your devices to be able to create your to be able to update the information that you need to do in the field. And again, side-loading base maps is a great way to reduce the load on the network and provision a lot of devices quickly. So definitely look at the strategies for leveraging side-loading base maps if you have a large amount of field users to support. And there's the team always is trying to make updates to make that workflow easier and more efficient. So definitely keep an eye on what's new with Collector for ArcGIS as it evolves to further leverage the side loading capabilities there. Also wanted to note, today we are really trying to focus on the potential uses of Collector for ArcGIS for emergency management and disaster response. And while we showed some things, quickly in terms of how to use this and how to get it set up, just wanted to highlight there's a couple of training options out there for some other recorded live training seminars on collecting information in the field with Collector, and then more advanced uses of offline data collection. So definitely some other great training resources that are out there, and we will provide these links to you after the webcast. So back to you, Chris, as we come to the conclusion here.
Thanks, Jeff. I want to just draw everybody's attention to one question that we got on the questions, and it was, what do we do if the number of licenses that we need or we have prior to a disaster are exceeded by a disaster response, and you want to send a bunch of people out in the field to do collection? That is one of the core functions of our disaster response program, is to provide additional licenses should you need them in the case of a disaster. So you can request assistance through the disaster response program, and we will plus up your licenses to support your operations should your emergency operations center be activated. Feel free to contact us if you want more information on that. The next steps is please explore the resources that Jeff presented in this webinar. Download it, configure it, play around with it, send people out. Get familiar with it, because the time to learn how to use these is not during an actual response. Our next webinar will be Thursday, January 7th at 9 Pacific, and it will be how to modernize your emergency management agency with ArcGIS Online. This will be one of those more broad topics about how to use the applications and templates that come with ArcGIS across your emergency management organization, and how they can all work together to really jumpstart how you're using these across the entire EM operation. If you have any questions, ideas for future webinars, suggestions, things that we didn't get to, I think I've got most of the questions answered through the question line, but if there's something that as you're heading out later today, pops in your head, please shoot Jeff or I an email, and our email addresses, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Follow us on Twitter. There'll be some materials from this webinar on there, and also announcements or anything that we need to get out to you guys in a fast manner. This is one of the ways that we push out information. And then next year, as we always say at the end of these, come to join us in San Diego. We'll be going in depth into all of these. There'll be lots of presentations, both technical and operational, on how to use all of these tools. Be aware that the next year's users conference is in June. It's early next year, so block those dates out on your calendar. The pre-conference that focuses on public safety and national security issues, including emergency management, is June 25th through 28th. That's the weekend, and then the main conference kicks off on Monday, June 27th, and runs the rest of that week. So it's before the 4th of July next year, which may sneak up on a lot of people. Here's a list of resources. These are made available to everybody. There's a home page for Collector. Lots of examples of things that we're doing. Some of these are operational examples that are happening through the disaster response program. Always, when you're looking for something to use, go to the ArcGIS for Emergency Management Solutions page. That is the menu of things that are available to you, and there's lots of great applications and templates there, Collector only being one of many dozens of things that are out there that can be used. And I often go to places and they have an unfilled need, and the answer is right there on that website, so please write that down and get familiar with it. And as I said before, follow us on Twitter. Lots of good information gets put out via our Twitter feed.
So Chris, I've got a bunch of technical questions that I've seen come in, and maybe before we close, we can try and hit a couple of those and provide some answers. So one of the questions here was, does collector support markups from field units? And there, what I wanted to say about that is there's not like a specific map notes type of feature class, but we've contemplated making a a Sharpie or crayon type of feature class if you want, and allow people to mark up just something really simple. So the field observations is one kind of type of example of that, of doing some markups if you want. There's another question about can you limit only to making changes to attribute data? And one way to do that is only to allow updates to existing data, and there's ways of having that geometry updates be turned off. There's a question about can you change the structure of the feature services offered by the solution templates, and the answer is yes. The service catalog is just one way to get started with that those existing set of features, but you can, if you go to solutions.arcgis.com, you can download any of the templates that are available that represent those map services, and then make any desired changes on the desktop side, and then publish those as feature services from there, and that should be documented pretty well there. But yeah, certainly you can are free to and encouraged to make any changes to support your organization. Let's see, can you flip between multiple base maps? So yes, if you're in a connected mode, you can flip between multiple base maps. There's an icon for that, a base map switcher within inside the device, but note you have to be in a collected environment for that to happen. So we'll provide some additional links on side loading of base maps. There's some good documentation on how to do that, and from that perspective, just to have required fields, that's actually, it can be set up in the geodatabase schema. So as you're setting up that information for domains and drop-downs, you just have to set it up to make sure that that's not nullable. So that's another, it's really through the geodatabase and your schema design that how you would set up some of those required fields, and then additionally things like drop-down. So look at that's where that's established in terms of a setting the required fields. And yeah, I think that's about all the questions we have time for. Anything else from your side, Chris?
No, nothing new. Well, one thing that I got a lot of questions on, I want to make sure everybody knows, is yes, Collector does require a username, an individual user identification, an individual license, and that's because everything we do in ArcGIS, it revolves around identity, and especially when you're collecting information, we want to make sure we know who the person is that did the collecting. So we got a lot of questions on that. So with that, that brings us to the end of our webinar. I'd like to wish everybody a happy and safe holiday, and we look forward to talking again in the new year. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and stay safe.